Welcome to Watercolor Studio 42. Today I'm going to be doing another a winter scene with some snow in it, and it seems like it helps if I do a picture that has some snow. It kind of keeps the snow a little bit away from us, and we end up with probably a lot more rain than snow, which is fine with me. I like most everybody, you know, when we were younger, we used to look forward to the snow and so forth, listen to the radio, no school today type of thing, you know. But when you get a little older, you think of, oh boy, having to plow it or shovel it or whatever, sand and stuff, things like that. You have to have sand and salt around and everything else. So anyhow, we have to kind of go with the flow, so to speak, what the weather's going to be. But it's all right for the folks up north. I have relatives that do a lot of snowmobiling, so they love it up. They're almost on the Canadian border, and they are on the Canadian border. I should say down the street. I think they're in Canada, but. They've always loved snowmobiling, and just about everybody in the family has one. I probably mentioned that one time before. But anyway, what I'm going to be doing today, I normally work from a photograph, but I couldn't really find a photograph that I was interested in. This is very colorful. A lot of warm colors in there, along with the cool colors, you know. And when I say warm colors, a little bit of yellow and pinks and things of that nature. And then you get into your cool colors, you get your blues and greens and probably darker shades of shadow and so forth. And even the snow has a little bit of it's not white. It has a little hint of blue, you know, soft blue over the snow. There's an area there where the sunlight kind of comes through, and it reflects a lot on the trees. Some of the color and so forth. So anyways, so that's that. Now, as far as sketching the picture out, I always tell everybody, I usually do it lighter first with pencil, just a regular pencil, 2B pencil, and I just kind of sketch it in ever so briefly, and just to get the feel of the, you know, the placement of the objects, the trees and buildings and fence, whatever. But just to get the feel of the composition. And usually you want to pick one particular area, one area for the eye to go to, called a focal point, a vanishing point, something of that nature. But taking you into the picture. And I always like to work with diagonal lines because they move. They take you back up into the picture. Verticals just go up and down like an elevator, and then the horizontal lines just go across like a bus down the highway or a truck or whatever, train, if you will, just going pretty much straight out. I never make the driveways or the road exactly zoom like a highway. You can do that, yeah, if you're really in the vanishing point and trying to emphasize vanishing point, things going to a vanishing point. But if you don't have to, make the road kind of bend around the corner, so to speak, okay? Bend around the corner and whatnot. And then I wanted to mention also, I was going to show you a little bit about shadows. I was using a flashlight. Sometimes you use a candle, but be very careful with lit candles at home and so forth. Don't have any paper around if you have a candle. There's nothing that burns, believe me. And make sure the candle's really safely out if you're using candle. But a lot of times, you want that soft light around something, you know, and you can use a candle, or sometimes I use a flashlight too, hold a flashlight on the object and whatnot. But a flashlight is a lot safer than using a lit candle, believe me. So now, this is it. Now, this picture has like a real fence in the foreground, and then it has some trees in back of that, and down the road there's a house. But what I'm going to try to do, maybe I'll put part of a house in. I only show sometimes just a suggestion of a roof and a couple of windows here and there. And the viewer usually fills it in. They know it's a building out there somewhere. But you don't have to, pull it out too much and too much emphasis. And then in the background, you can always have another building that may have a steeple. And that could be the town hall, or it could be a church of some nature, sort of a backdrop for the town, and so forth. So now, what I'm going to start off with, seeing this is an outdoor picture, we're going to start off with doing the sky first, the upper part, and then we're going to drop down and do a little bit of the foreground. And then we'll finish it off with a little bit of the fussy work with putting the fir trees in with some snow on them. In this picture last time, I didn't put too much snow in there, but I could have suggested a little bit of white paint in there on the branches. I could still add the white, of course, seeing that the paint's dry, but I was doing this just with straight edges, and I've been doing a lot of things with straight edges and not just drawing freehand lately, but you can do either one, either way. I think the straight edges tend to be more geometric, and probably more contemporary for a contemporary home. And so I've been doing quite a few straight edge pictures lately, and they're more contemporary. You can do any subject using a straight edge ruler, flowers, bottles, water bottles, whatever you want to use for a prop. Okay, so anyways, let's get into the picture here. I don't think there's an awful lot of drawing I have to just suggest where I want the trees to go. The trees in the background can be more of a solid color. But I mentioned just briefly a few minutes ago, I start most of my pictures at the top when I'm doing outdoors. So let's start at the top. We're just going to wet the paper with water, some clean water over here. And what I'm going to be doing here is putting in the sky, sort of a soft, very soft wash for the sky. It's almost sort of a grayish, warm gray in that particular picture. Okay. Of course, when you work from another artist, sometimes they do some of the work for you because they've already kind of figured out what's going to be what, and what's going to be emphasized, and the cast shadows where they fall and all that. So sometimes it's easier to work from somebody else's painting, and it's never going to look like theirs, at least mine don't. That's for sure. Okay, there we go. Get some of the water on there. Now, if you get too much, if it forms some puddles and you don't think it's going to dry that fast, I just hit it with a paper towel. Just dry it up a little bit, catch some of the puddles, but you do want it moist. So that when you put the color in. Now, I'm going to start off with just a soft little wash of gamboge. This is yellow, and let's start off with just a little wash of that. And usually I use the biggest brush I have to begin with. So let's just put, now we wet the paper, so we're just going to put a little bit of a soft wash of yellow in there. Okay, I don't spend an awful lot of time going around things. I just going to put it in a hurry. And then before it can dry too much, I just add a little bit of some of my orange into it. Just a little bit of orange in there. Now, if you come in too heavy, just use your brush, pinch it out, and you can push some of that water around, because sometimes you might come in a little bit too heavy with the wash. You can always blot it also. You can, blot your brush, or you can even blot directly on the paper. I use a brush kind of pick up some of that extra color. I don't want it to be too dark. I don't want it to get it too dark. The paper in the picture, the artist made a very pale, soft, almost like a overcast sky cloud. You got that soft wash in there. Now some of that wash is going to reflect down into here too, on the snow. So we'll just add just a soft wash in there, just a hint, okay? Just a hint. You want to soften it even more, you just blot it. So now we got that in, we got yellow in a little bit. How about just a pinch of, let's put some red into that. And just a hint of red, not enough. That's a little bit much, but I can spread it around a little bit more. See how it turns pinkish, red? Okay, you get that pink in there. Now my sky is darker than my photograph here, or I shouldn't say a photograph, actually, it's a painting. But it's softer. It's a little bit, I gotta lighten mine up a little bit. Now here's the thing too, a lot of times when you're doing a picture, after it dries, it does dry lighter. But also, you might want to just whiten it up a little bit. Just take some of the paint out where you want really the sunlight to be falling. In this picture, it's a little bit to the upper right of center. Just a little bit up in that area. Okay. Again, you can reflect some of that pink. Doesn't have to be that dark. That can go along in around the bottom here, just a base color, something like that. Now, I sound like a broken record, but every time I'm talking about something, I always mention it that I don't spend an awful lot of time being too fussy. And I always start off with a big brush. I just get some color on the paper. That's the big thing. Get something out there. Okay, there you go. Blot that. Help it to dry faster, and also maybe take out some of the color so it's not quite as dark or noticeable, because we still want that kind of look whitish of the snow. Okay, now, if you keep pushing your brush around on your paper, sometimes if it's not expensive paper, it will probably start to disintegrate a little bit. So you have to be careful. Now, there's two types of paper. Of course, there's the regular paper pulp, made wood pulp, and then they have the paper that's a little bit more expensive, but it's called rag or cotton. When I say 100% cotton. So that particular material rubs, it's a little bit harder to disintegrate than paper does. But either one doesn't matter. You can when you're starting out, you don't have to spend an awful lot of money on very expensive paper. Even the least expensive paper costs quite a bit more today than they obviously did in the past. But anyway, that's that. I'm getting some of that color in there. It seems like it's a little darker. Yeah, a little heavier pink through here. Oops. You can have next to nothing on the brush here. There you go. All right. I try to be overly cautious with this. Now, the darkest area in the picture is going to be over in an area off here somewhere, and so forth into the trees. So that you have to have a little darker color so that you get more of a contrast of the white snow on the branches. So what you see in between might be a little bit lighter. Now this picket fence that runs here, I could use my ruler to kind of draw that in. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, why don't we do that? Down in here, just take your ruler. Now they do have brown permanent markers and whatnot, and they have different sizes. They have one that's fine, and the one that's a little bit heavier. I kind of use that one in between sometimes. It's not really a thin brush, and if you sometimes get stuck, you can even use a ballpoint pen, just black ink pen. And that gives you even a finer line than some of the markers do. Okay, we'll see what we could do with the fence in here. It's going to eventually have some snow on it, but here's, I'm going to come across in here somewhere and put in a couple of rails. Doesn't have to be, it could be a broken line, I guess, because you're going to have snow on it anyways. Then it has a post that's in here. I'm going to try the post. You could probably put the post in a little bit heavier with a larger marker. But there's one there. How many in the picture? 2? Okay, let's put something out here. 1, and you get one here. And then there's something that goes off this, kind of off this angle here. We just put something like that in there. Now, that paper is wet, so the markers don't take too good to wet surfaces. So I may have to use a little bit of somewhere in here, a larger marker. Fine tip isn't going to make it. Borrow one of these. Here we go. Oops. All right. This one probably might be a little bit too heavy. Let's see. It's about the same thing, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, let's see if I can use this one. We'll use the fine edge on this one. I know this might be a little bit too heavy, but we can hide it a little bit with when we put some snow on it, on the rail. Something like that. And then I had the post in here somewhere. We'll put a little bit of a vertical, maybe something back here. Something over here. You can get this one straighter. And it goes off on an angle that way. Something like that. Then it has it's a double rail fence, so we'll show a little bit at the bottom. Going across here. Something like that. I don't think there's too much on the other side other than the base of the tree. We can put some of that in. I'll probably use the brush for that though. Now, there is a building. We just show just a rooftop. Just put a little bit of that in there. Don't have to go into a lot of fussy detail. And there might be a window. And there might be something else off here eventually, something off up in there. Okay, now, I'm kind of talking to myself a little bit here, but what we're going to do now is there's going to be some trees in here, so I'm going to take a little bit of time to just to work some of the under color. This is a pretty good sized tree in the foreground here, and then there's another one off over in here somewhere, and then there's going to be another, there's something else that's coming into the picture off here. And then this is just going to be a kind of a tight cluster of trees along through here, and a little bit. It sort of kind of fades off in the distance over there, and you're going to see a sort of a softer ground line that's back there, and then probably the edge of the road's going to have some snow, you know, kind of plowed up on the sides of the road here. Maybe a little pile of snow in the foreground there. So that's pretty much what we're going to be working on. Now, this is dry enough. Make sure it's a little bit drier. I'm just going to be working some of the darker values into that area. And also I'm going to be doing the tree. Now the tree is probably going to be, I'll put the cap on there, the tree is going to be a little bit fussier because usually what happens with me, a lot of times I get carried away, and like this here, I filled it all in, and I wasn't able to put some snow on it. Now I call the snow like frosting the cake, so to speak, you know, and so you got to have the cake to be able to put the frosting on it. So that's why I'm just going to do some of the darker parts of the tree. Now, somewhere in here, I had a tube of green to begin with. So I'm going to put that right. Wait a minute, I thought that was, that's not the one I'm looking for, I don't think. No, it's one that didn't have any, the cover was off of it. And I don't know if I put it back in there or not. Well, we can always mix green if we have to. We'll mix a little bit of the yellow with the blue to get green. Okay, so anyways, we're just going to put a, get my Payne's Gray going here somewhere. I really poured out too many, you know, I keep adding tubes of paint in the bag, and I don't need that many. I don't need too many of the same color, I should say. Okay. Well, we'll use that one. We'll put a little bit of blue with that. And we'll do some of this deeper area that's the under part of the tree. I've got so many brushes hiding here. Okay, here we go. Got this here. Just put a little pinch of blue in it. Okay, get it a little darker there. And I'm just going to go up into this area here. Get some of that in there. Now, if you want, you could take your brush and you can pull back some of the edges to make it look like it's blurry. Not so much blurry, but further away. So you don't see real clean cut edges to anything. So you could just pull some of that back like this. Just take some of that out of there, the edges, some of the edges off. So over in here, same idea. And some of these trees, you can just more or less suggest them in the background. Just soft, just a little bit of a contour of the trees. You don't have to go into a lot of fussy detail at all. You pull this one up a little higher. Okay, just suggest some of the background color. Now you can mix a little bit of some of your blues in there too. Some of the darker areas in down through here, you can add a little bit of blue into that. And again, you're just going to sort of blend the edges off. Just pull them off with some water on your brush. Just soften that in. So it suggests trees, but it's not defining them really clean cut. Now, there's a tree that's in here in the foreground. You can almost leave that white as a paper like that. Just make it suggested. All right, there you go. I'll come over here a little bit more. Yeah. More or less suggested of the trees. The less you do sometimes, obviously, the better off you are. If you don't try to put too much into the painting, you just make it more suggested. Now, as we get over here a little bit more, off in here, it really looks kind of faded away. Almost, that's got too much red into that one. We'll hide that down. Hide it a little bit. There you go. It's more of a greenish color in there. But we can put some of that in down in through here. And it's just sort of just fading off into the background. Okay, now these trees here are in the more or less more in the foreground. So what we can do is make them a little bit more defined. Some of the areas, the dark areas, and we'll kind of go up the tree a little bit. Remember, I have to be careful I don't get too much green in there, and I don't save too much room for the white. So I have to do this in such a way that it looks like there's some snow on that tree there. See if I can work around this a little bit more. Okay, blot it. So that's kind of how you suggest maybe some of the tree. It's all it is just kind of patches, but you just have to make sure it still looks like the contour of the tree, but just leave a lot of white in there. Okay, I'm doing this some of the trees, probably 3 at least, the uneven number back in the background. Okay, something like that. We're going to carry over a little bit more into here. I don't mind getting a little bit more blue into it. See what we can do. Something like that. A little bit purplish, but that's okay. Picking up some of the sunlight on some of the trees. And back here, it's just almost hardly noticeable. It's more suggested of the trees in the background. You can always get fussy with a finer brush later on if you want to really kind of define some of the the contour, make it a little bit more noticeable. Okay. Certain things can jump out a little bit, but not much. That's a little bit on the brighter side here. Pat it down. Okay. See what else we can do. Gets a little darker in this spot. I like to work some of the pinks in there too, you know, make it kind of a little bit more cheerful with the warmer values. But if you do that, you just have to make sure that you introduce some of that suggestion of the blues off somewhere else in your picture. It kind of carries over. You can work it in somehow, even down here, where it's very, very faint off in the distance. That's a little bit too dark. Let's blot it down, quiet it down a bit. There we go, that's better. Yeah, right along through here, just kind of push and pull a little bit back and forth. Wiggle that brush around. There you go. We blot that down, quiet it down a little bit more. Okay. Now, I still haven't forgotten a little bit about it. I could put a building in there, but I could make it a whiter color anyways. But off in the distance, you might see something through there of a building. Let's kind of break this up a little bit more, contour. Yeah. Now, how are we doing down in the foreground over here? See if we can get some more darker shades in there. Break that up a little bit more. You can get some other color into that if you want. What you try to do is echo. I call it echoing the color. You take the same color, but you put it in different places. 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different parts of your picture. And it just pulls the whole painting together for you a little bit more. Okay, let's go up into here. Kind of, you're still trying to maintain the shape of the tree. You know, you don't want to hide it too much with all that snow. Now, I suppose you could do this the other way around too. You could probably do the white first, and then put the green in. You could probably work it both ways, or either way. You could probably experiment with that idea on a piece of scrap paper somewhere. These are things that you can work out, exercises, with color. Okay, let's put a little bit more over here, a little heavier in that corner. And bring that down into here, a little bit more shadow down towards the base of the paper. Now, what I'm not doing is trying to copy exactly, and I never could really find the exact color or put in the exact shapes, you know. So I kind of wing it and kind of do my own thing. I get to a certain point, and I start introducing some of my own thoughts about, you know, how to finish this picture off. Okay, let's just do a little bit more through here. Put that ground line in a little bit stronger in there. So what you're really doing here is, I guess, kind of dabbling around. You know, you're kind of working a little bit. You refer to the picture, whether you make the shapes exactly like the picture. I'm not sure. I don't know. I know in my own case I don't always try to copy it exactly, but you can put in some of the suggestions. You can fill that in a little bit more with a solid color. Okay. And we'll still think about reflecting some of that warm sky across in the picture as we go along. I'm going to just see if I can put a little bit of the some of that blue in there. Oops, kind of bright. We'll quiet that down a bit. There you go. Take some of that out of there in a hurry, huh? There, that's better. But we can put some of that in. And on this side, we still wanted to make that look like a road, so we got to show some of the edge of the road in through there, and it kind of vanishes down around the corner. Now, I'm going to take some of the edge off. Snow is sort of soft and powdery here. So again, you're taking some of the edge off. You can leave some of the edge around the base here, bottom, and just pull some of this snowbank out, break it up a little bit more. You see how that kind of, you have to kind of experiment. You don't really do snow paintings year round, so when you get to the season of winter, it's like almost starting over again, you know, getting the feel for the softness of the snow, the powdery type of snow. The colder it is, the snow tends to always be powdery. I lived a couple of years, I taught up in Maine, and we had some real wicked cold winters. It averaged 20 below zero at night, and it seemed like the whole month of February was around 20 below. But it was dry, the dry cold, and you tended not to notice it as much as you do around here. It seems like the cold around here is more of a dampness that cuts into you a little bit more. But up there where I was, anyways, it stayed pretty cold. And you could stand out there for a little while, probably freeze and not even realize it. Seems like, and when snow's on the ground and a full moon, it's so bright at night you can almost read the newspaper outdoors. I never tried it, but I think you could. Okay, around the bend. Let's bring that line, cut that across in here a little bit more, a little darker. Okay, so this is where we're at here, and what you want to do is take some of those edges off, you know, just sort of soften it before it can dry in too much. I don't mind a contrast of edges, but you don't want to make it too sharp. Soften it down a bit. Okay, something like that. Now today I want to give myself a little bit more time to put some frosting on the cake, so to speak, some of the white snow on the trees. That would be nice. Let's get some contrast up in here a little bit more. Again, I'm just kind of referring a little bit to the picture here, the painting. Bring that more out, and I'm just looking at some of the areas that have a little bit more contrast. A little bit, we could break this up a little bit more. Probably over in this area. Separate these two trees there. Maybe a little bit more contrast in here. I have to be careful what I'm doing here. Yeah, something like that. Okay. That doesn't look like it's soft enough. Take some of the edges off. Okay. Now I want to give that a little bit more time to dry. I always say that and I keep working on it. We could show a little bit more. I want to take a different brush. Let's try one with a point to it. I can find one in there. Should be one. We use that one. A little bit more of a point to it. Okay, we want to go a little bit into here. I never deal with really a hard edge on it, snow. Always pulling it back a little bit more. Okay, there you go. Now I'm going to do something with this side here, that corner, because if I pull the tape off, I'm going to end up with a white edge going into the snow here, which probably some people try. I don't know. I guess you could do it, but let's just put just a little bit more of an edge down here to separate that. Right along when I pull the tape off. Now that's a little bit too much on the blue side, so we want a little bit more contrast. So let's pull some of the blue out. Pull it onto the tape. Yeah, something like that. Okay, how that works. Now, there's always that little touch-up, here, there, and whatnot that you can do. But you don't want to do too much. You don't want to do an awful lot. I can always put the house back in there, somewhere up in there. Just paint that area a little bit more with the white paint, cover it, and then touch it up a little bit. There we go. All right. I'm just sort of softening some of the edges. See, something like that. We could just make that, take some of that shape or line out of there. All right. Now, let's see what we can do. I'm always saying, like I mentioned, that I say, well, I'm going to give it time to dry before I do such and such. And then I keep going back into it and touching it up and painting and wetting the paper all the time. So I have to kind of get to a point where, hey, enough is enough. Now, I'm going to see if I got enough contrast up in here so that when I pull the tape off, you see a white margin around it. All right. This is going to take, I think I'd probably use a smaller, a little brush in there just to suggest a building or sort back there. You can do something with it down the road. Let's go trade towels here. Okay, what else we need? Okay, I think we've got got to a point here where I could kind of come now. Maybe start thinking about where to put some white paint. Got to put some white paint in here. Let's put a little bit off over in there. We'll just break this up a little bit. I'm using a pointed brush, by the way, so I can lift up and make it a little bit thinner in places. You get a little bit too heavy, I bought it. Quiet it down a bit. Okay. I kind of just move around a little bit with it. You can use the white out. If you don't like a particular area, you just put white in it, and that's one way to solve that problem. If you have something here you want to put back in, you can put some more white into that. You can put some white on the rail fence. If you so desire, you can have something like that. Just soft, and it's good for softening the edges down also. You know, it does whatever you want to do with it. Let's see, we could come up into here, put some white into that. You have to be careful. Now, if you come in too heavy with the white, you can always go back later and put some more color on top of the white when it dries. So it's sort of kind of building up different textures. Okay, let's kind of cut into here, break that up. I'm kind of just following the picture a little bit, and you know, trying to get the effect. I know this can be done a little bit darker. I can go much darker in here to separate this tree from that one. It should be 1, 2, 3, and they kind of go down the line. Okay, there you go. What do you have off in here? Maybe cut into that a little bit more with the white. Break it up. And you can even put a little bit of white into the road, and you could take some of your pale blue, and you can mix it into the white, you know, along the road. If you want to make like a tire track in there, I guess you could, a little bit in the road. Okay. Now, right now, I don't have too much a real strong focal point, you know, off in here. Now, the way you could put a focal point in is to have something like a building. You could put the house back in here, just show some of the roof and the window. Or you could have, off in the distance, you could have like something like a steeple, you know, of the town off in the distance. And that kind of takes your eye up in there a bit. Now, you might want to harden the edge through there a little bit more too. So it just needs just a little bit more work with it. I'll just put a little bit more. I just want to see if I can darken that edge there a little bit. Not a real hard line, but just suggested. And off in the distance, again, you could just show just a little bit of the steeple. Kind of bring that up into there. Maybe put a little window in there or clocks, something off in the distance there. So, and same way with the house. You'd have a house, you show a little bit of snow on the roof type of thing. and put back the window. Sometimes if it's such a fussy little area, I just use a pen and just put in a window, suggest a window in there somewhere. But that does give you a little bit of an idea of where you can take the person back to a particular spot. And that spot doesn't have to be overly noticeable. It's just enough, so that your eyes can settle into some little area off in the distance. Just maybe the steeple of a building or whatever, some windows here and there, that it must be some houses in the area. So you're not out there all by yourself. Okay, let's do a little bit over in here. Put a little bit more, break this up with a little bit more snow. I don't know if I need to put too much more into that. I don't want to overdo it either. Yeah. So you're just kind of moving around. I never settle in one spot. Usually when I paint, I'm always jumping around here and then over here, back and forth, and I don't finish any one particular area. Let's break this up a little bit more down here. Add a little bit more white into it. Well, you can see how you can kind of jump around a little bit. Now, I'm going to say that I don't think any of the work that I usually do in a shorter period of time is a real finished product. But I just have to work it to a point where, we have to stop pretty soon. And so I can suggest what I might do to it. I certainly might want to define more of a steeple off in the distance, maybe put a couple more little buildings in here, possibly. Clean this up a little bit so it doesn't look like the trees are too fused together, and probably bring out a little bit more contrast up and through here. But today, I think I've got some paint all to the edge. I'm just going to remove some of the tape, and you can get an idea what your picture is going to look like if you put a mat on it. Just take some of this tape off around the edges. Oh, boy. Tear it on an angle so it doesn't damage the surface of your paper. Okay, here we go. Wow, good tape. Sometimes too good. All right. Get that corner off. Wow, that really stuck over there. There we go. Wow, there we go. All right, so that just gives you an idea what it might look like. It does need a little bit more definition, detail in this area through here, and probably define the road a little bit more, clean up in here where the buildings are. But that just gives you an idea. The composition is pretty good. The layout, it just has to be cleaned up a bit. So that will give you an idea what that's going to be. And it's certainly, this is much more worked with. This is probably a painting that would take probably roughly maybe close to an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours at best, and to get it as fussy as this. And so a lot of times the paintings are done obviously larger than the card, but what they do is reduce it down. So this painting here could be about this size, and they just reduce it down to fit the card, obviously. And that tightens up the composition a little bit more too, as far as the detail goes. But that's our winter scene for this week. So thanks for being with us, and brushes up. We'll see you next time.